All right, we are back for another sprint race weekend here in COTA. Home race for us. And we're feeling pretty good. We swapped out.
I told you about the new parts that have come in from the factory, right? Well, they're all fitted and good to go. I hope they do the trick.
We swapped out the turbocharger, so hopefully that'll help us out a lot. And then we had some R&D changes pop up before we went into the weekend. We have the aero and chassis, I believe. No, it was chassis and engine that was up for grabs for the changes. So basically, having to watch our R&D points, our resource points, till the end of the weekend, till the end of the season. So we have 6 races to go before the end of the season, and get as many parts as we can converted over for next season, as we see Charles Leclerc heading out for practice. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and knock out practice in this one session. We'll see you guys for qualifying and the sprint race. All right, we are coming into this qualifying after an okay first practice. 139.7 on the hards, 138.4 on the mediums, and we're looking for a decent time on these soft tires. It's going to be a 137.1 for provisional P4. That's going to be good enough to get us into Q2 with that single run. Onto a new set of tires here for Q2, and we're taking this corner a lot better. I could have put it on the throttle a lot sooner. So that's going to be a provisional P3 with a 136.1, good enough for Q3. And then another set of fresh tires coming around the corner on our first run of Q3, and that's going to be good enough for pole position and to hold on to it.
And with qualifying complete, let's review our top 3 today. Johnson, Hamilton, and George Russell. Goodbye for now then, but really we're just getting started. Make sure to join us again for Lights Out tomorrow.
All right, so similar situation to the last race there in Singapore, where we did poor in practice and it didn't reflect on anything that we had going. But yeah, so the soft tire run, 2/10 ahead of Lewis Hamilton. But if it's going to be anything like Singapore, we're not going to have as much pace that we did here in qualifying. So it's going to be a front row start, another pole position start for myself here for the Circuit of the Americas sprint race, and hopefully we can hold that P1 start for the main event. So, without further ado, let's get to the race.
Welcome to today's sprint. This is shaping up to be another fantastic weekend. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Johnson lines up on pole position, and Lewis Hamilton completes the front row. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Russell, Perez, Norris, Verstappen, Sainz, Bottas, Gasly, Hulkenberg, Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri, Ocon, Jackson, Joe, Mick Schumacher, Magnussen, Leclerc, Sargent, and Callie Mayer. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out. Here we go then. The formation lap is underway ahead of today's sprint. We're almost ready to start the sprint as the cars take their positions on the grid, with the drivers and teams making their final preparations.
All right, here we are coming into our grid slot to start the sprint race weekend. Here, as we're starting pole position, with the sunset. We're in the shade right now, so that's going to help our tires a little bit coming up the hill. But with the Mercedes backing up behind us, and you can see the Red Bull there in P4. And we're feeling really good into this. As long as we take that outside corner of turn 1, we shouldn't come in contact with anybody coming around the corner of the hill. You see the Connor Sport there sliding into the very last position as we're getting ready for the start. Our 5 red lights are coming on. Hamilton next to us, Russell behind us, and we're off to a good start here on these medium tires. Perez and Verstappen trying to make a jump on the Mercedes. You can see that we're staying on the outside. The Mercedes of Hamilton staying on the inside, side by side. We're going to push through. And even though we had a good first corner, these S's are going to prove difficult for us all weekend. As you can see, Hamilton is there close behind by our timesheets. The intervals, he's less than 2/10 behind us. We almost make a mistake here, and we end up doing so. Not close enough for him to make a position on us, but that's going to hurt us later on. As we're coming around to start Sector 2, you can see the gap already forming between us, Perez, and Hamilton. Perez, I don't know where Hamilton went after the S's, but Perez is now in P2. Yellow flag through that corner as it's a slow corner for everybody going double wide there. You noticed, I think it was the Connor Sport of Aiden Jackson. As we're coming to the sharp left-hander after that straight stretch, the McLaren of Landon Norris trying to fight for position against Carlos Sainz. And coming through the Sector 2 section, I've had a lot of trouble with this. I know it's coming up here. The triple apex, triple right-hander apex. I had some rough time during practice where, you see the little spin there as we're coming around the corner. Only 6/10 ahead of Perez here on the first lap. Another little spin there on our second to last corner to finish out lap 1 of 7 on our sprint race here in Texas. As we're going to be pushing as much as we can. You can see Perez trying to close in as best as possible. Perez is finally going to be able to close in just a little bit later. We make that same mistake here in the S's, and he manages to pass us. Hamilton trying to make the same move on us, but we're caught on the inside and we fend him off. You can see 2/10 back there as Perez kind of shuts the door on us, as he's now 8/10 ahead just by this one stretch. As we come to the DRS section, no DRS yet, as we don't get it till lap 3. Another snap of oversteer there on these soft tires. Soft tires at this time of day, or the mediums, sorry, as we're coming through these S's again on lap 5. Verstappen managed to make a move on Hamilton, and he's going to have these apexes a lot better than we do, so he's going to make the same move that Perez did there on lap 2. And I'm going to be dropping back down to P3 and defending against Hamilton. You can see the train of cars there, Sainz and Norris behind Hamilton as we go into the Sector 2 straight with DRS, but not enough to catch up to Verstappen to finish in P2 for the sprint. So it's going to be P3 for us behind Verstappen and Perez. That's going to be a Red Bull lockout for the main event.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for all your hard work out there. That was a really strong drive and a great finish. Well done.
So let's review the updated driver standings. Max Verstappen should be pleased with his performance, making gains at the top of the table. The grid is set then, so that just leaves the race itself. Join us tomorrow where we'll be live with all the action. And until then, goodbye.
All right, as of right now, after that sprint race, we managed to stay on the podium, so it's just a matter of time and strategy. That way we can stay on the podium. It wasn't a sprint win for us. Sergio Perez on the soft tires, Max Verstappen with pace on those mediums, and a little bit of slip up as we had trouble through Sector 1. I just hope that we're going to have a little bit better time there throughout the main race, getting the tire degradation down. That way we can actually take those S's a lot better. But without further ado, let's get to the main event.
Here we are then in one of the fastest growing cities in the United States, the fabulous Austin in the great state of Texas. The circuit itself, 14 miles southeast of the city centre, has been home to the US Grand Prix since 2012, the latest in a long list of iconic tracks to have that honour. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Sergio Perez will lead us away from pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Johnson, Hamilton, Norris, Sainz, Russell, Gasly, Ocon, Tsunoda, Jackson, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Joe, Sargent, Mick Schumacher, Leclerc, Bottas, Mayer, and Oscar Piastri. With preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track.
All right, here we are, home race number 2 out of 3. Vegas right around the corner as we're nearing the end of the season, and we're starting in the second row behind the 2 Red Bulls. Red Bulls locked out from our P3 finish in the sprint race. They're wanting us to use the alternate instead of the default. What are they using in front of me? I can't tell. We'll have to wait and see. We're going to go ahead and look at our strategies and see what we can do, and then we'll get right to the race.
Here we go then, the formation lap gets underway and the excitement here is building as we near ever closer to the start of the race. Which team will come out on top? Who's got their strategies right for today's race? Well, we'll soon find out. We're almost ready to start the race as the cars take their positions on the grid, with the drivers and teams making their final preparations.
All right, Verstappen, Sainz, and Logan Sargent are the only ones that are not on the soft tires. That means Sainz is going to be on the mediums. Verstappen's on the hards. You can see ahead of us. He's going to be on the hards. So we're going to have a jump on him, hopefully, into turn 1, as the Red Bulls didn't get any penalties. They're going to be locking out. And I believe that is the Mercedes of George Russell side by side with us. You can see the mediums on that Ferrari there, and the Quadrant McLaren of Lando Norris behind us. So we're waiting for the rest of the grid as we see Oscar Piastri pull into his grid slot. Our 5 red lights are on, and we are off. We're off to a late start, actually, as you see Max Verstappen locked before us, but we managed to work with Sergio Perez and pushing him off on the inside, holding him back to P3. So it's going to be myself and Perez here through the end of turn 1, and we push him off, and we're holding P1 as of right now, hoping for a better guide through these S's compared to the sprint race. A little bit earlier in the day compared to the sprint race that we had previously on these soft tires, so a little bit better control and reaction from these soft tires. The 2 Red Bulls are side by side coming through the end of those S's, giving us a little bit of a gap there, 9/10, almost a second already, because they're side by side. You can see Hamilton stuck behind the Red Bulls as we turn onto the sector 2 straight. And once again, a yellow flag there from that slow turn from people being side by side. Schumacher, our teammate, getting knocked back to P20. I'm not sure what happened, but I guess he was overtaken. See the 2 Red Bulls still fighting for it. The Mercedes pushing the McLaren out wide into the inside of the corner as Norris tries to fight Russell and Hamilton for a position. And we're already almost 2 seconds ahead of Perez as they're fighting. And I'm kind of rooting for Perez at this point. I want to see him on the grid next season as we're rounding out towards the end of the season. This 3-point right-hander doing a lot better than we did in the sprint race in practice. And yeah, so rounding out the end of the first lap here in the main event. And we're already over 2 seconds ahead of Perez and Verstappen, about a second between them, as we're coming up the hill out of the shadow of the grandstands. Lap 5. Finally are able to have Perez catch up to us with his momentum on those soft tires. We were losing a lot of time on these S's, and we hold the outside line for speed, but Perez makes a move on the inside. We oversteer a little bit here as we try to hold him off. And pay attention to Russell and Hamilton. They are 1.6 seconds back behind us. Norris now passing Verstappen. Verstappen already back into P6 on lap 6. You remember he was side by side with Perez there throughout majority of lap 1. As myself and Perez are fighting, that allows Russell and Hamilton to just try to close the gap on us. As you can see, they're already right there next to us. That one little instance of us side by side has given Russell and Hamilton here on lap 6 an opportunity to try to catch up to us. As later, towards the end of lap 6, they're finally able to get DRS and try to make a move. As we're coming up this main straight, and we're really starting to feel these soft tires again. As you can see, the Mercedes of George Russell trying to make a move on the inside. He passed Perez with ease. 3 wide technically into turn 1 as we come into the S's here. And Russell is now P1, Hamilton back in P4, Perez behind me in P3. We're trying to follow as close as we can to Russell, trying to push the car as much as possible without a little bit of oversteer. It's I've always had trouble with my setups here in Circuits of the America because of these S's, because I want that straight line speed to be able to catch up. And I'm trying my best through these S's, but we're doing what we can. About a 6/10 gap here as we're coming up to the timing line for DRS. And yeah, so the glowing, still unsure of what's going on there. The only car that I've really noticed it on is the Aston Martin. So trying to fight for position against George Russell. We're going to be holding the outside line here through sector 2. We overshoot. No penalty for overshooting because we weren't going at full speed. Sergio Perez is right there behind us as we're losing position against Russell again. We're going back and forth, and it's going to be like that for a while throughout these next few laps. A little bit of a snap of oversteer there, which loses our fight for P1 with Russell. But moving on to lap 9, I actually missed my braking point. I had to brake hard there, and there's Perez coming into the pits behind me. He saw that I missed my braking point, and he took the opportunity to jump us in the pits, like literally in the pits. It reminds me of China. I don't know if it was Rosberg or Hamilton, but somebody jumped the pits, or Max. I don't quite remember, but that's going to be a loss of position on us as we come out behind Perez back in P13. Our teammate Mick Schumacher is still back in P20. And over the span of a lap and a half or so, we have all the other drivers coming in, so not really anything to worry about right now as we're tailing behind Sergio Perez. But as we're starting lap 12, you can see we lost position against Perez, and we're back in P3 and Verstappen. As far as I know, I really think Red Bull double stopped here on the lap that I went in with Perez, because I don't remember seeing Verstappen coming out of the pits when we were coming up the hill. But anyways, lap 12 already, as really feeling it on these mediums. As you can see, those S's are really hurting me when it comes to a time frame. Verstappen slowly closing the gap. Lap 13 now, trying to make a move on Perez, pushing him to the inside so we can have that outside line as we're trying to both fight him and trying to get close to Russell. But the more myself and Perez fight, Russell is getting away. You can see Russell is 1.5 seconds ahead. And every time that Perez tries to get past me, that just opens up the gap some more as we're side by side coming through some of these corners. Perez making that same move he did in the sprint race, as well as some other drivers there through the S's, and we're just going to give him that position at this point. We're not going to fight it. We're just going to use Perez to tail along and try to catch up to George Russell. Lap 16 now. We're trying to make a move on Perez again. This time we're moving on the inside. And a little bit of contact there from Perez as we get up into P2, and I basically told myself, like, we need to defend this position as best as possible for these points. But at this point, you could hear the engine. I don't know what it was I was pulling off because I was checking the screen, but we have a full-blown gearbox engine failure to end our race here on lap 16.
These have won it, and what a great race it was. So Natalie, what do you think helped them deliver this result?
What an amazing race today. We all love to see an overtake as a Formula One fan, and we got those by the bucket load.
After an excellent performance at the Grand Prix, I'm sure there'll be plenty of celebrations tonight amongst the Mercedes team, and they certainly deserve it. Let's have a look then at the driver's standings. Despite the best efforts of our championship leader, that lead has taken a bit of a knock today. So then, Natalie Pinkham, who would you rank as your driver of the day?
There are a few contenders, but George Russell definitely stood out, I think. A really solid drive from him today, and one I'm sure the fans enjoyed.
It's time to see how things are shaping up in the Constructors' Championship. And pulling further ahead in the standings, it's Red Bull. I'm equal parts exhausted and elated with this weekend of Formula One, so be sure to join us for the next one.
All right, so very upsetting end there to our home race as we get that engine failure, and it was actually the gearbox. I thought it was going to be our we had a message for our turbocharger, but I thought it was going to be that, or I thought it was going to be that, but it was our gearbox. So that's our third gearbox gone, I believe, if not fourth. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get a penalty for the next race, 10th place grid penalty. Maybe not, but we'll have to wait and see. Our teammate Mick Schumacher still outside of the points, as he didn't do so great. We're the only DNF. As we started in P3, we were back and forth with Sergio Perez there for P2 for the podium. I was feeling really good about it, and you guys saw through the S's how we reacted. Very strange, not normal. I tried to cycle through because I saw that pop up. I saw a red marker, a red engine, but on the car itself, it was all green and yellow. But yeah, so a rough end to our Circuits of the Americas race here, and not much else. So we'll see you guys in the next episode.